Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
What shame is really trying to teach you, the surprising key to healing trauma and finding yourself again. Episode 176. Shame is one of the most important human emotions. It can quietly influence the choices we make, the relationships we create, the risks we take, and even the way we talk to ourselves when no one else is listening. Unlike guilt, which says, I did something wrong, shame can leave us feeling like something is wrong with me, and that belief can become a heavy burden to carry. Shame is why a criticism, a mistake, a rejection, or a painful memory can sometimes feel bigger than the moment itself. Often it is shame underneath those reactions that is something many of us know well, but rarely talk about openly. Many people spend years trying to outrun shame by achieving more, pleasing others, staying busy, hiding parts of themselves, or building walls to protect old wounds. But what if shame isn't just something to eliminate? What if it's actually trying to communicate something important? What if the emotions we avoid are pointing us toward the places that need compassion and healing? Trauma doesn't always show up as a single dramatic event. Sometimes it lives in the experiences that shaped us over time. The moments we feel unseen, unheard, rejected, unsafe, or not enough. These experiences can create stories we carry about ourselves, and sometimes those stories continue long after the original pain has passed. The journey of healing often requires us to understand ourselves differently. Instead of asking, why am I like this? We can begin asking, what happened that taught me to feel this way? That shift can open the door to self-awareness, self-acceptance, and a deeper understanding of our own humanity. Today's conversation explores the complicated relationship we have with shame, how it develops, how it affects our emotional lives and relationships, and how we can begin transforming it into a pathway towards healing. Because the parts of ourselves we have learned to hide are often the very parts that need our attention and care. I'm excited to welcome my guest today, who brings deep insight into trauma healing, emotional growth, and the process of reconnecting with ourselves in a more compassionate way. We're going to explore what shame is really trying to tell us and how understanding it can help us move toward greater freedom, authenticity, and self-acceptance. Welcome to Frank Spinelli, MD. He's a physician, certified health coach, and one of 95,000 survivors who filed claims in the Boy Scouts of America bankruptcy case. With over 20 years of clinical experience in internal medicine, he brings unique authority to trauma-informed recovery, medical expertise, lived experience of childhood sexual abuse, and pandemic relapse, an active coaching practice implementing the COMPASS framework with clients. Today, he works with hundreds of clients through the Reframe platform, helping individuals apply trauma-informed tools to navigate shame, addiction, and behavioral change. He is the author of the new book, The Shame Compass, a radical framework for trauma healing and self-acceptance, as well as P-Shy, a memoir and the advocate guide to gay men's health and wellness. A former TV host and longtime health writer, Dr. Spinelli brings both clinical authority and media experience to conversations about recovery, resilience, and living with authenticity. Thanks so much for being here, Frank. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'd like to begin by asking you to help my audience understand what are the three biggest misconceptions people have about shame and its role in our lives?
Yeah, that's a really important first question. So the first biggest misconception is the distinction between shame and guilt. Many people think they're the same thing, and they're not. So guilt is, I did something bad. It's about behavior, and it's actually useful because you can correct your behavior. Shame is, I'm bad. It's about identity. It's very corrosive. And confusing them can keep people stuck because they apply guilt's solution to the shame problem, and those solutions don't work.
Say
Go
more
ahead.
about why they don't work, because I think that's really important for people to understand. I agree with you.
Well, because it leads to the second misconception, and that is that shame is a sign of weakness. And in fact, people carrying the most shame are often the ones who were hurt by systems or people who should have protected them. So shame is frequently a wound from someone else's failure that was installed in us as a personal deficiency. So that's why those solutions won't work. Because if I did something bad, I didn't feed the dog. I feel terrible about that, but I said, you know what, that's never going to happen again. I'm going to set my alarm. I'm going to correct that. When I think I didn't feed the dog because I am a bad person, saying I'm going to set the alarm isn't going to take away that intrusive voice in my head. I'm still going to feed the dog, but I'm saying, here I am feeding the dog, but what a bad person I am. So it doesn't change how you see your identity because you still believe you're bad, even though you may have corrected the behavior. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
And then the third one is that what we say all the time, or what you hear all the time, is, well, you need to eliminate shame. And that's essentially impossible, and the whole reason I wrote The Shame Compass, because you cannot get rid of shame. Shame is an emotion with a biological function, and the goal is to learn what it is communicating to you, and really, instead of spending all your energy trying to run away from it. So those are the three biggest misconceptions.
yeah, I always believed that it was important for people to look at shame in therapy because it's such an obstacle to being able to grow. And I think it's just a very important thing to understand. So I was sincerely glad to have you here today.
Oh, that's nice.
I really loved your idea of wanting people to acquire, and I love this word, shame literacy, which is far more important. I totally agree that trying to eliminate shame altogether is a big mistake. Could you
Yeah.
elaborate?
Well, what I try to teach in the book, and what I try to really teach and instill in my clients, is that shame is not a weapon, it's a diagnostic tool. So let's move it from indictment to information. So what is that information telling you? Well, you have to learn shame literacy, and that is the ability to read the shame as information. So when shame arises, most people do one of two things. They collapse. They collapse in the belief that everything they ever know is because they deserve this. And it can really close people down. I'm a bad person. We'll go back to that example. The second thing that they may do is they'll pretend it doesn't exist. So they go into denial mode. The moment you can name it, locate it in your body, and ask, what is this protecting? It begins to lose its grip on you. And so, just like we talk about emotional intelligence, it is the ability with shame literacy to recognize and work with the emotion rather than having them control you. And so nobody teaches us this. We have to understand this. Oftentimes we're taught to be ashamed of shame. I grew up in an Italian Catholic upbringing. I went to Catholic school. The nuns shamed us all the time. And this is a fallacy, and we know this. You know this. No one's life has improved because they were shamed. And so we have to teach ourselves that this is not how life exists, that we need to parent ourselves. We need to talk to ourselves as if we would talk to our best friend. And in order to do this, you have to learn shame literacy.
Yes, I would completely agree. Let's explore the first step, the letter C in your healing path, which is confront, stop running, start noticing.
Yeah.
Share more.
So most of us are world-class avoiders. We run away from situations that bring up a lot of feelings because we don't want to sit with shame. So we stay busy, we overachieve, we please, we may drink, we may get on our phones and scroll, anything to avoid the feeling. So what we have to do, and number one, is confront, which means a decision to confront this, not attack it, but just to stop moving long enough that you can sit with this feeling. And for me, that came during the pandemic lockdown. I lost all the external structures that were holding me together. I had suffered a childhood sexual abuse. I had been with a therapist for many years. I thought I was healed. And then the COVID pandemic came. I was in isolation, and I was also at the same time working with my lawyers. We were in a class action suit to sue the Boy Scouts of America, and I had to fill out a very detailed 47-page questionnaire. And I had, in my opinion, a rock bottom moment. I was over drinking. I was just trying to avoid anything to do with this. And so finally I looked in the mirror one day and I said, just because you think you went through all that therapy and you came out of it doesn't mean that shame isn't hiding and waiting for situations like this to arise. And I said to myself, I need to confront this. And that was the entry point for me about creating the framework, which is the 7 steps we'll talk about. And without that, nothing else would be possible. I wouldn't be here right now.
Yes, I think we are such an avoidant culture in general, and secrets, and we keep secrets, and we don't tell people things that, and once and I always thought one of the primary things that AA did was that when people tell their stories, it dilutes the shame. And I've always thought that's and I've never heard anybody say that besides me, because I would really try hard to talk people into it, because it's such a power. And I wish there were groups for other situations with shame like that. And it's a big deal. I really admire that you have created something out of your trauma. That's wonderful for the rest of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
In your book, you describe 4 different types of shame, which I have never heard before, and I really like that too. Competence shame, relational shame, body shame, and trauma shame. Would you please talk about this? Because I think distinctions are what therapy's about. I really think people can learn from distinctions.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. And so to start off with competence shame, that is the shame we feel around our own abilities, our own intelligence, our performance. We will often say to ourselves, I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable enough, I'm not successful enough. It shows up as perfectionism. It also shows up, more importantly, as imposter syndrome. And we have this fear of being discovered. Relational shame is very much the shame we carry about what we are worth in connection with others. So I'm too much, or I'm not enough. And that's why I'm fundamentally unlovable. This is the shame that makes intimacy dangerous, because you go about feeling that if you truly had your secrets known, it would be evidence against you by your partner. This comes up when people don't explore sexual fantasies with their partner because they'll think that there's something wrong with me, or certainly that they're inadequate. And this, like you said, if they had just shared their secrets and became vulnerable, they might be able to bridge. Instead, they retreat into isolation because of the shame. The third is body shaming, which is exactly as it sounds. It's the shame about your physical self, your size, your appearance, your sexuality, particularly as we age. For many women, this is the number one reason they feel shame about their bodies. I believe the second is their ability as a mother, or their inability to be a mother. This causes them great shame. And interestingly enough, and sadly, it is also imposed upon them by other women. And so, because this is truly how they feel that they are unlovable again. And so it's layered with the relationship that we just talked about. And then finally is trauma shame. And this is the deepest and most damaging. It's the shame that results from what was done to us, the abuse, neglect, the violence, the institutional betrayal. And the cruelest thing about trauma shame is that it is transferred from the perpetrator onto the victim. And the shame belongs to the person who hurts you. Trauma shame is working to return it back to them.
I like that a lot. One of a moment when you talked about moms not feeling like they're a good enough mom, and I hear about that so much, but I still remember my son's nursery school teacher, and she said, Rhoda, you're a really good mom. And I went into the car, and the kids were in the back fooling around with each other, and I burst into tears because it was so lovely to hear it from somebody that only witnessed me, not a family person. There was something about that validation that was so important. And it was such and I would be shocked if she even remembered she said it, but it was so helpful, It really was.
Yeah, you know what you brought up earlier that is so important, and I feel like it's important enough that we need to say it again. The reason why people live with shame in the way that they do is because isolation is what shame wants. That's where it breeds.
Yes.
And the only antidote for shame is connection. So talking about your shame and connecting with others actually frees you from this guilt and the shame that you experience. So what you said earlier is critical to this entire conversation.
Yeah, it is. The second letter is O for observe. Observe. What is shame telling you? Tell me more.
Well, once you've confronted it, you need to observe it. And this is the step where you're not fighting it. You're really observing it. Think of yourself as a scientist. And this is where the neuroscience really comes into play. Shame has a physical signature. We drop our shoulders, we drop our gaze, we may look away, and we do this. And this is a physical cue, and we understand the stimulus and the response. In that gap, it is, what is the shame saying? What do we really need to know? What is the belief under it? And when did I first learn this? And if you could imagine a scientist or a physician just looking at somebody, that's the way you need to observe your shame. You need to do so with a little perspective and be non-judgmental. That's very critical. You want to do this with just observational. So again, confronting it and then observing it and trying to understand it as if you were using it diagnostically as a physician would.
And that scientist gives you that little bit of distance.
Correct.
Which really helps you just back up a little bit. I like that. I like that way of thinking about it. Another important distinction you make comes from John Bradshaw about toxic shame and healthy shame. Share more about this and explain how we can learn about values we are violating. I'm always into values, And I don't think it's something we talked about in the 60s and 70s a lot. There was a favorite book I use with people, with kids mostly, called Values Clarification. That we don't have that kind of stuff around. So I loved your values piece.
So I mean, again, I didn't create this piece, but I totally agree with you. One of the things I do with all my new clients is I say, give me your 3 core values. And when they list them, I say, don't overthink them, just give them to me. And I often will bring up my own because they change. They change with us.
Yes, they do, yes.
Currently, what are my 3 core values? Whatever they are, we write them down. And we use that as our North Star for all the work we're going to do moving forward. Now, with Bradshaw, he is foundational for me. His insights was that healthy shame is actually functional. It signals that we've violated our core values. We are living out of alignment with them. So if you know, some people don't even name their core values, so how can you even begin to understand if this is healthy shame? So it keeps us accountable. And it's the discomfort you feel when you hurt or did something that went against your own integrity. So for me, that is healthy. Now, toxic shame is something else entirely. It's not about behavior. It's about your being. It says, I am flawed as a human. I am toxic, and I will always have this installed in me, even though it was installed in me by someone else, whether it was a parent, an institution, or a culture. And absorbed self-knowledge before you had the capacity to even question it. So it's something that often happens to many of us very early in those informative years. The practical distinction really matters. When you feel shame, you have to ask, is this pointing to a value misalignment? Did I violate something that I hold dear? Can I address it? That's one way. That's healthy. The toxic part of it is, it requires a completely different response because it involves an internal voice that you are choosing to believe. So I think his work is still foundational. I did like the way he makes those distinctions, and I incorporated them in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. The third letter is M for MAP. Trace shame back to its source. Talk about
So this is, probably one of the pivotal moments where you have to understand what is the shame, what's the root of the shame? Who is the voice I'm listening to? It's not typically your voice. It's a distorted version of it. And so this is you being a detective now and going back to where did this shame come from? Now, most time, if it's really something traumatic, you may need to see a therapist to really focus on that origin. For the most of us who have gotten to a point where we've built lives, we've built beautiful lives, we are working now as survivors, but we're trying to live and work and survive without the armor. The mapping is just an exercise to understand. So for me, as an example, I could be at work. My manager, for some reason, talks condescendingly to me one day, and I react. I am activated. By doing the mapping and by doing the framework, I now step out and say, I'm going to pause here. I'm not going to answer this. I'm being triggered. What is this telling me? Let me confront this. Let me observe this objectively. And let me realize, you know what? This is taking me back to 11-year-old Frank who was abused. But guess what? I'm not 11 years old. I'm an adult male. I'm a physician. And I know this situation is totally incongruous to my core values. And it's that way of talking to yourself that you have to learn to adopt. Not so much focusing on the origin, but just acknowledging it. And someone who I really love as a mentor said something to me that I lived with my entire life. He said, it's okay to look back. Just don't stare.
Oh, I love that. I do.
I know. I always want to say that I made that up, but it would be a total lie, but I wish I did.
I'm always giving credit.
Yeah.
That's great. Then there is P for process. Move through the three bodies. Please explain the three bodies, and my audience will have to read the book to learn more details, of course.
Right. Well, this is the part of the book that I am the most proud of, and it's that shame doesn't only live in the mind. It lives in the body. It lives in the stories we tell. It lives in our relationships. So healing has to happen in all three places. So first is the physical body, where the shame is stored somatically. It's in the nervous system. It's in the tension. It's in the flinch response. The story body is the narrative layer, the beliefs, the scripts, that inner voice that interprets experiences and tells you them in maybe a false way, a very negative way. And then the relational body is how Shame plays out in our connections with others, the walls we build, the distance we maintain. And so it's very important to process it, meaning to move through all three bodies, because you can't think your way out of a somatic experience. The body comes first. And so it's very critical that you have to understand the ways it does manifest. So physical, story, and relational.
I especially appreciated the A for accept, integration, not elimination, because I believe that integrating shame works so much better.
Right.
Inside of you is incredibly important, and that's why part of why I wanted you to be a guest today.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, this is a very important piece, and it's also the part that surprises most people, because we come to healing wanting to get rid of shame. And we have to arrive somewhere clean and unencumbered, but acceptance isn't about denying shame. It's not about surrendering to it. It's about acknowledging that something happened, something you didn't deserve, something you didn't ask for. And being able to integrate the shame is no longer allowing it to have veto power over your choices. So it's present, but it's not driving you. And I tell people, accepting isn't denying it. What happened to you still happened. The way it makes you feel is still valid. I will never not be a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, but I am no longer a victim of the universe because of it. But I can choose what that means and how it informs my work, and whether it narrows or deepens my capacity to connect with others. That's what acceptance is. Understanding that it did happen, acknowledging it, but not letting it rule me or allow it to veto my choices.
And when you don't accept it, then it does do its dirty work under the ground and trip you up and create problems. And mostly for yourself, because you're believing that you're not okay deep down. And so the integration just seems so important to me. The first S is for sustain, living with shame literacy, which for you created resilience in the face of unbearable emotion.
Right. Well, that's the critical piece when you get towards the end of the framework, is that you're able to sustain the work through shame literacy, which is maintaining the practice even when life gets hard, because guess what? Life is hard. And shame doesn't just visit us once and leave. It returns, particularly in moments of stress, moments of failure, loss, exposure. It comes back. It will haunt us. What changed for me was that I stopped being ambushed by it. I knew the feeling. I could name it. I could observe it. I could map it. And I knew the questions to ask. And that acknowledgement, it doesn't make shame go away. It doesn't make it any less painful, but it makes it navigable, if that's the word. Having resilience isn't the absence of being knocked down. It's having a reliable way to get back up. And the framework teaches that, and it's what I still do every day.
There's a Buddhist quote that I used to have when I had an office, and it said, fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Oh, I love that. I think I've heard that, but I love it.
Yeah, I bet. I do think that's cool. Which brings us to the final S for serve, transform pain into purpose.
Right.
Which certainly worked for you writing your book.
Yeah, well, it did. And I say right off the bat that this is probably an optional stage, because it's not for everybody. And being in service is personal, and it's relational. And it's the recognition that what you've been through, that you've metabolized shame, the wounds you've named, the healing you've done, and the value alignment that you've corrected. And this is about performing recovery in a way that involves sharing your story. And whether you do it in small groups, whether you do it at an AA meeting, whether you do it here on a podcast, it is really going back to what we said earlier, is that shame lives in isolation. And so the hope is that in sharing my story with you, this is transactional. You are learning something from me, but I am also experiencing something in return. And hopefully your listeners feel the same way. And it's all about community. And that's why I named the book The Shame Compass, because, and by the way, I'll tell you a secret, there was resistance to using the word shame in a title of a book. They
You're
thought that would
kidding.
be, well, they just thought that people didn't want to be on the bus reading a book called The Shame Compass. And I get it. But it was so important for me to destigmatize the word, to take ownership. Like, I can't think of a better phrase than "there is no shame in my game," because I don't feel any shame about it. I feel actually very empowered in speaking about my experience, and the hope is that others will feel the same way too.
It seems like we're trying to restore balance to shame. And it means that owning it and understanding it and not letting it suffocate or strangle us in isolation, as you pointed out. And I think part of that is being honest with yourself about regrets. And I always liked Barbara Bush because she was overweight and unapologetic and wore $40 pearls. And I always thought those were two kind of cool things. And then I read an interview, and she said, nobody should ever have regrets. And I was really upset with her because, besides her politics, but I really, really felt very deeply you can't go through life if you're honest with yourself and not have regrets about things you've done. And another distinction you've made, it's things people have done to you that helps you understand shame better. So it's, to me, by telling that story, it's about the complicatedness and restoring balance. And you've given us a lot of nice distinctions about it. Shame from the outside, and then what we do with it inside, and trying to restore balance. What else little tidbits do you have for my audience that will help them on this path?
I love that story you told about Barbara Bush, and you had me until you said what she said, which is never have regrets. That, to me, is quintessentially in opposition to acceptance.
I agree.
It's not, she's negating everyone's journey by saying, well, don't ever have regrets. It's like saying, well, don't wake up in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not have regrets ever? It's impossible. And I think it also minimizes experience. So, yeah, I disagree completely. It's not.
Yeah, it's not authentic.
It's not.
If you're an authentic person, again, it's about being vulnerable as a strength instead of secrets and silence to be strong, and make that appearance, that perfectionism that I feel. I wanted you to talk more about that because I feel so many people have gotten caught in that trap of perfectionism.
Right. Well, it is a trap. It's essentially procrastination dressed up in a really nice term, because whenever we meet people and they say, well, he's such a perfectionist. Well, sometimes we need progress in the face of perfection. Sometimes we don't need to be stalled in our perfectionism, and we use it as a crutch. And I think once you can realize that you're using something as a crutch to avoid what you need to address, that's when we need to uncover things. I find that most people realize that they experience shame, but they're not ready to address it. That's why the C has to be the first part of the framework. You have to be willing to confront it. And again, it's not a matter of dissecting it and getting into it, but just acknowledging that you feel shame about a trauma, and sometimes just even speaking it. When I have small groups with people who would have never spoken in a larger group, or who have never shared before, will say something just very honest about their lives, and immediately the connection that they garner from the others, it just lifts them up. So I'm always about being authentic, showing up as your true self, and not worrying about it. And again, we talked about shame, but one thing that we misconstrue as another myth is that vulnerability is weakness. To be vulnerable means you have a tremendous amount of courage and strength to share something about yourself. And I feel that is when you see people really turning the corner, that are really ready to roll up their sleeves and do some work. And so I hope the book will facilitate that for those people.
I'm sure it will. Now is the time for you to remind my audience of the title of your books, plural, because there's more than one, and your website and anything else you want them to know.
Sure. So the name of the book is The Shame Compass, a radical framework for trauma healing and self-acceptance. It comes out August 25th. And if you'd like to know more information about me, certainly go to my website. It's easy. It's my name, frankspinelli.com. And you can always find me on social media as well. And I really appreciate you having me. This has been great.
Maybe the biggest takeaway today is this. Healing doesn't happen when we become someone new. It happens when we finally stop abandoning the parts of ourselves we were taught to hide. Shame loses its power when we bring it into the light. Thank you for joining me for this important conversation, and I'll see you next time as we keep uncovering what helps us live healthier, more connected lives.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.